Hi, my name is Paul Sloane. I'm a guest with Phil Gerby today, and I'm looking forward to it. I've been a salesman, a marketing director, managing director, CEO, vice president international, and I'm going to share with you the best piece of leadership advice I was ever given. If you're a leader, if you're leading a team of any kind, then this piece of advice is worth its weight in gold. It's just 7 words, and it goes like this: only do what only you can do. And what that means is you should focus on leadership tasks and you should delegate all of the day to day stuff that you're wasting a lot of time on right now. And you should focus on the strategy, on recruitment, on praising people, on setting the vision, on doing leadership tasks. So only do what only you can do.
I love that advice, Paul. So, who'd you get that from? When did you learn that in your career?
That was from a client, a customer, and I did a workshop for them, and he shared it with me. So Howard was the man's name. So it was a great piece of advice.
Yeah. So, how did that impact you? Like, was that early in your career, mid career?
Unfortunately, it was late in my career after I'd been a CEO of a failed startup, which didn't quite work out, and in which I got totally involved in firefighting every day, trying to fix today's problems rather than delegating those and focusing on the strategic stuff, which is what leaders should do. So I learned the hard way that that is good advice.
Yeah, those are the best lessons. We learn them the hardest way. Sadly, the school of hard knocks is better than university, better than college. So that's interesting. So Paul, your new book, right, Lateral Thinking for Every Day. When did you when did you realize that lateral thinking was going to be something that was important to you?
Oh, a long time ago, I collected lateral thinking puzzles. I did lots of lateral, and I did a book of them, which was a big bestseller. Sold over 500,000 copies, still in print. Lateral Thinking Puzzle, as it's called, and you'll find it on Amazon. And then I was interested in how you use the same principles in solving the puzzles, which are fun things where you have to ask a lot of questions and challenge assumptions and come at the problem from different directions when you get stuck. Could you use those same principles in business to solve business problems? And I developed a workshop around that. And then I wrote a book about that, The Leader's Guide to Lateral Thinking Skills, which has done very well. And that it's developed from there. And I'm positioned now as somebody who's an expert on lateral thinking. And I believe lateral thinking is the key to unlocking innovation.
Hmm. Well, if it's the key, let's start then, Paul, by defining it. What the heck is lateral thinking?
Well, normally we come at the problem straight on, the way we've been trained, block on block on block. It's the routine way. Lateral means from the side, literally coming up from the side, a different, entirely different approach. So if you were running a taxi company, you could develop it in all sorts of ways. You could have more taxis, you could have radio controlled taxis, you could have all sorts of, but you would never invent Uber. Uber is a completely different approach to the same problem. And it's a taxi company that doesn't own a single taxi. It's an app that's worth $50 billion. That's all it is. It just puts people who've got capacity together with people who want capacity. And it's very clever, but it's a lateral approach. And in the same way that you could not develop an aeroplane incrementally into a helicopter, you have to start with a completely different concept to solve the same problem, or into a spaceship, indeed. So sometimes you have to start again and say, is there a better way to do this? And the answer generally, nearly every time, is yes. We just ain't found it yet.
That's interesting. So why do you find that it is that we attack things head on instead of going laterally? Is that what we're taught? Are there classes in lateral thinking that we should be taking, or what?
Well, we're taught to solve problems in a structured manner, and that they were taught at school. And generally, at school, as you get further up, there's one right answer. Most of the exams in our country, you get multiple choice, and if you tick the right answer, then you get a very high score. But in life, there's more than one answer. But people don't want to experiment because they'll look foolish. If you try something different, chances are it won't work. All right. Lateral thinking is not guaranteed to work. It will just produce a different idea. Many times those crazy ideas just don't work. And you look a bit foolish. You've wasted some money. People ridicule you. And people like to stay in their comfort zones and do the conventional thing.
Yeah, the dreaded comfort zone. Nothing great ever comes out of the comfort zone,
Well,
unfortunately,
it's
huh?
steady, it's safe. And people like safety.
Yeah, we crave safety, right? On Maslow's hierarchy, that's kind of table stakes. We have to be safe. So how do we allow our salespeople, our leaders, to do more lateral thinking? How do we allow them to fail more?
Well, you have to change the culture. A good way to start is by reading my book, which has lots of examples and tips and techniques and inspiring stories. But you need a culture in which it's allowed to fail, in which people are encouraged to experiment, encouraged to try things, and where you deliberately take time to challenge conventional thinking, where you use divergent thinking to come up with lots of crazy ideas, and then you select some that you're going to try. And a very good book on this is The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, in which he talks about getting out there with a minimum viable product, something you can show the customer and say, what do you think of this? Do you like it or not like it? And then you adapt it. And you've got a limited amount of time to get your new idea, your new startup off the ground. And you've got to try things very quickly and don't work step by step to produce an ideal product. Produce the smallest, simplest version that you can and show it to people.
So showing it to people, customers,
Yeah, you
internal
select the
peers,
customers. You select bright customers who are in the swim, who know what's going on, who can look into the future. You choose those customers and you take them this mock-up, this wireframe. It's a set of screenshots, and you say the app would work like this and it would do this for you. What do you think? And then the customers say, well, we really like that. But this doesn't work at all. This is stupid. I mean, you shouldn't do it that. You should do it this way. And then you go back and you take another version to them. You say, what about this? Oh, that's very good. Now you fix that, but you've introduced this new problem. So you go through this iteration, and you go through many iterations, and eventually you get something that works.
That's interesting. So you talk about starting with culture, though. How do leaders demonstrate that this really is a culture that will reward failing? Do they share their failings first, or do they reward failure? How does that look, Paul?
Well, the first thing to say is people don't believe what you say. They believe what you do. Actions speak way louder than words. So if you say, we want experimentation, we want innovation, we want people to take risks, and then you punish someone for doing something that fails, you've sent the message which contradicts everything you've said. So there's a number of things you can do. One is to talk about your own failures as a leader and say, I made this failure early on and I learned this lesson. That's a very powerful thing to do. Another very powerful thing to do is to praise somebody publicly for trying something that failed. So you say, Phil here, he tried this new experiment. It didn't work, but we learned these lessons. And that's the kind of initiative we want in this organization. And people say, just a minute, the boss is praising somebody who failed, because it's easy to praise people who succeed, and you should. But if you praise somebody for showing initiative, another thing you can do is you can give everyone 2 jobs. So you say, you've got to do your current job really well, and you've got to find a better way to do it. I want you to introduce initiatives into the company to find new ways to do things. And when it comes to the appraisal, you say, well, you did your current job really well, but what initiatives did you champion in the last 12 months? What did you do that was different and new? What things did you start? What experiments did you undertake? And send out the message that in order to be promoted, in order to get top grade, you've got to be a change agent as well as just a manager.
Wow. So being a change agent is often, other people are looking at you kind of funny, though, aren't they? They're thinking, like, why is Paul doing that? What's going on there? So how do we overcome that internal inertia to be liked and understood?
Because what you have to do is you have to create an atmosphere in which experimentation is encouraged and rewarded. You have to give people time to try things. So Google, Genentech, 3M famously allocate time in between projects for people to experiment on anything they want. And that's encouraged. And most organizations, when I ask what's inhibiting innovation in your organization today, the most common answer I get is time. We're too busy. We're working flat out on the day job. We've got no time to try new things. We don't have the budget. We're not encouraged. Approvals are too difficult. We're risk averse. All of these things also play a part, but time is the single biggest. And you've got to allocate time. And when somebody comes to you with a great idea and they say, I'd like to develop this experiment, and you say, well, that's a good idea, and they say, I'm too busy, you say, what can I take off you? What can I give to someone else to do to free up some of your time to pursue this idea? And one of the stories I tell in my talks, I give a lot of talks, I tell the story of Ted Hoff. And Ted Hoff got a PhD in electronics in 1969, and he joined a little startup company in California. It was called Intel. And Intel got a commission from a Japanese calculator manufacturer called Busicomp. They said, can you redesign the 12 hardwired circuits that go into our calculators to make them faster and denser. And they gave the job to Ted Hoff, who'd never worked on calculator circuits before. And he studied these, and he went to his boss. He said to his boss, what the customer has asked for is 12 hardwired circuits. He says, but I think it might be possible to produce one circuit which could do all 12 functions if we programmed it. Can I try that? And his boss, to his eternal credit, said, yes, try it, see where it leads. If it doesn't work, I'll get one of the experienced engineers to cover for you. Ted Hoff invented the microprocessor. And every device you've got today, whether it's a washing machine, a car, a mobile phone, is packed full of microprocessors. It fueled the growth of Intel into a huge multi-billion-dollar corporation, all because one boss said to one employee, yes, try your crazy idea. And then the question I asked the delegates when I'm giving the talk is this: what would you have said if you'd been Ted Hoff's boss and he'd come to you and said, what the customers asked for is this, I want to do something completely different? Because I think 9 out of 10 bosses, maybe 99 out of 100 would say, no, we believe in customer service here. If the customer wants that, give the customer what they want. We can make a profit. We can move on to the next job. And they would have missed the microprocessor.
Wow. So,
do you like that story?
I love that story. I love that story. So how, as a leader though, I mean, we have to, you know, a lot of that failure could be on us.
Yes.
Right. That failure could be on us.
Absolutely. So the innovative leader is comfortable with the degree of failure, and they're prepared to explore sidetracks, knowing that many of them will be dead ends. But if you don't explore some of those sidetracks, if you just keep straight ahead with the way we've always done things, an Uber's going to come from the side, or an Airbnb, and they're going to wipe you out. Somebody's going to find a different and better way to meet the needs of your customers.
Wow. Wow. Well, one of the things that you talk about in your book is the value of the contrarian thinker, that we need to listen to them. So
Yes.
Talk to me about how we listen to them when everything that they say seems contrary.
Absolutely. And they challenge our view of the world, and they're generally ostracized and rejected because they're so unconventional. What you've got to do is you've got to say, that sounds interesting, tell me more. What data have you got? What evidence have you got to support this contention of yours? And then you listen, and you should be open-minded. Now, they may be talking nonsense, and it may be just, you know, a fancy theory, but you should examine it, because generally very often there'll be a germ of a great idea there, and there's something that's interesting. And whenever anybody criticizes you, what we tend to do is we tend to be defensive. But what you should do is you should say to yourself, there might be something in what they say. And then you think about it. And generally, if there's a criticism, either overt or implied, there's a lesson for you there, and you should listen. And contrary, anyone who says something different in the department is very valuable. There's a lot of evidence that teams that are aligned and cohesive and get on well together are less creative than teams where there's some contention and disagreement. You don't want a team where they're all fighting all the time. That's not productive. But you want a team where people can disagree, and people can raise their hand and say, I think we're going down the wrong path here. I think it's a better way to do this. And then you should listen to them, especially the quieter ones who very rarely speak. You've got to listen to them, because they may be seeing something that you're missing. And the problem that someone like Putin has is he's got nobody telling him that he's going wrong, because he's just surrounded by yes men who tell him good news. And you need to know what's really happening, and you need to know where we're going wrong early so that you can fix it.
Well, a couple things you said there really resonate with me. That's the whole idea of telling me more, right? Tell me more instead of being defensive when we take that. So give me an example, Paul, of how the tell me more has worked or shown up and seen great results.
Well, I'll give you a piece of advice, and this is a piece of advice for managers. It also works at any level in the company, but it's particularly powerful for managers. And it's one of the best management pieces of advice I've ever received. And it's this: you take your people in one at a time, and you sit them down across the desk, and you say, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. All right? And whatever you answer, I can't disagree with. All right? I'm just going to make a note of it. All right, here's the first question. What am I good at? And they'll say, well, boss, you're good at this, and you're good at this, and you're good at this. All right, that's very nice. And it's nice to hear. You're very good at that. You're very clear, and you're very... all right. And then the second question is the key question. Where could I improve? And then you shut up and you listen. Now, because you asked the first question, they gave you a lot of praise, they're much more likely to be honest and candid with the second question. And they say, well, actually, sometimes you're far too strict. Sometimes you're really tough on the lower part. Sometimes you come across as too brusque, whatever it is. You say, really? And you can say, give me an example. Give me a for instance. You can't disagree. You can't say, no, you're wrong. Actually, I'm a very reasonable person. You can't disagree with, if they say it, you're just making it. But you can say, can you give me a for instance? And then you call in the next person. You just have to say, and if you get the same answer from all, you've uncovered your weak. Now, knowing your weaknesses is an absolutely key thing in life and in management and in sales and in marketing. Knowing what you're good at and we've all got blind spots. We've all got blind spots. And if you can understand your blind spot, see yourself as others see you, you can really improve your performance dramatically.
Wow. Yeah. Those blind spots are blind for a reason. Often because we never asked for that feedback, or we got defensive and said, no, hold on, let me give you an example. That's not true. Right? We wag our finger and we, no, that's not it.
Yeah. So, that's right. And we tend to be defensive. We tend to push back. It's a natural reaction, I think. It's particularly a masculine thing, to push back and say, no, I'm tough. I'm not weak like that at all.
Yeah. Well, that's a good parenting tip too, for those listening that have children, to listen and not defend when your kid says something, because often they receive it in a different way that was intended.
Yes, indeed.
So cool. So let's go into another part of the book, because I love the fact that this book, like many of the chapters, Paul, are just a couple pages.
Yes.
Almost every one of them is super short, super easy, super good examples that are extraordinary solutions to those ordinary problems. I love the subtitle. So one of the chapters that was like, when I looked at it, I'm like, what the heck does this mean? And then I read it and it made sense. And that is, better a giraffe than a zebra. So what the heck does that mean, Paul?
Well, a zebra is an acronym. It stands for zero evidence, but really adamant. And that's people who are adamant about a position. You meet them in politics, in life, in sport, everywhere. And they're really sure they're right. They don't have any evidence, but they're really sure they're right. And they're not open-minded. They're a zebra. Zero evidence, but really adamant. And a giraffe has a high view. They overlook all of the other animals, and they're trying to see what's happening on the horizon. They're trying to look around in different places, and they're receptive to different ideas. So my advice is, much better to be a giraffe than a zebra.
That's funny. And that makes so much sense. I mean, just because somebody is vocal and adamant about their opinion doesn't make them right.
Correct.
Especially if they don't have any evidence. I think that's a good lesson. So how do we gently deflect those people away so that we can get more time with the giraffes?
Well, that's a good question. I think you have to challenge them at some stage, and you have to encourage them to think of other things. So there are a number of tools in the book, and one of them is De Bono's 6 thinking hats. Now, if the 6 thinking hats, if you've got a proposition, we're going to close this department and move everyone here, or something else, and some people are very against it. You get them in the room and you say, here's the proposition, all right, and you lay it out, and we're going to wear the 6 hats. And wear the 6 hats, everyone has to wear the same hat at the same time. So you start with the white hat and you get any information, any data, any facts that you've got. We know this, let's look at the facts, the incidence of complaints or the incidence of productivity, whatever. And then you put on, and you make a note of that. And then you put on the red hat, you get everyone's feelings. And this is really important because we don't talk about feelings, but feelings are important. How do you feel about it? I feel angry. You just write it down. You can't disagree with someone's feeling. I feel excited. You just write it down. I feel very nervous about this. I feel threatened. Right? Feelings. And we don't talk about feelings, and men don't talk about feelings in particular, but they're really important things. And then you put on the yellow hat, and the yellow hat is the hat of optimism, of sunshine. You say, what's good about this idea? And even if somebody in the room thinks it's a terrible idea, they hate it, it's come from their worst enemy in the company, they have to find something good about it. Well, if it worked, we'd get these benefits. We'd save time, we'd save money, we'd improve communication. You write them all down, all right? You go all around the room. Everyone has to wear the yellow hat. Everyone has to say what's good, all right? And then you prioritize them, what the big benefits really want. And then you put the black on the black hat. And the black hat is a hat of criticism, of caution, of risk, of danger. And you say, what could go wrong? What are the downsides? What are the risks here? And even if you think it's a great idea, it's a fantastic proposal that you support, you've got to find fault with it. Well, there's a danger here. And we could lose some of our best customers, and we could lose some of our best staff if we close. And then you write them all down. Then you which are the really big ones? Now, just look at what's happened. We've worn 4 hats. We've identified the information. We've got people's feelings articulated. We've identified all the benefits and prioritized. We've got all the downsides and prioritized. We haven't had a single argument yet. There's been no scope in the process for an. You have the argument with the green hat on, which is the hat of creativity, of growth. How can we improve this? How can we make it better? How can we get the yellows that we want and mitigate the blacks? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But you're in a very positive, constructive discussion. So if you've got people who are really cynical, then wear the black hat all the time, for example, then when you come to the black hat thing, you say, very good. Now, when you put the yellow hat, now you have to think of something good. So it forces them to think in a new way. Rather than, and normally in the department, certain people are optimists, certain people are pessimists. This way, everyone has to be both roles. So that's one way.
Wow. So give us another way, maybe.
Another way, I think, is to get outsiders to come in. I think, there's a way to do things here. And if you can bring in somebody from an entirely different field to talk to your department about how they do it. There was a sales department and they just weren't making enough cold calls. And they were reluctant to pick up the phone and do that. And the manager brought in someone from the army. And the guy from the army, they asked, how do you encourage your soldiers to be courageous, to take risks, to face the fire of the enemy and move forward? And he talked about it. And he talked about it's about honor. It's about teamwork. It's about medals. It's not about money. It's not about personal reward. It's about being part of the team and the honor of the regiment and all that sort of thing. And they took some of those ideas and applied them in the sales team, and it helped. So sometimes you've just got to move out of this way of thinking into an entirely different way of thinking in order to come up with ideas. And you need to encourage people to do that. You don't need everyone in the department to be a lateral thinker. You don't need everyone to be a creative genius. You want some doers. You want some people who are completer finishers, to use a Bell Bin term. But you do need some plants. You do need some ideas people where you encourage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think combining those 6 hats and then recognizing that it isn't everybody that's going to have those brilliant, those blinding flashes of obvious or whatever. I think that's really helpful, because I think a lot of times we think everybody in our team has to do everything. And that's not true. We have to focus, just like leaders, right, on only what we can do, only what we're best at. Is that,
yes.
Am I getting it?
Yep. Only do what only you can do.
There you go. I got it. See, I'm tracking with you. So with that, one of the things that I enjoyed in the book, the short chapter on lateral marketing and about being outrageous, I think outrageous isn't talked about enough, right? Like doing something that's completely different, completely outside the box. So talk to us about the benefits of being outrageous and share an example or two.
Well, the benefits of being outrageous are that you stand out. And there's so much bland marketing out there, and if you don't stand out, Seth Godin wrote this book Purple Cow a few years ago now, where he said it's no good just being another brown cow. There are so many brown cows out there. You have to be something different. You have to be a purple cow, or you might have a purple cow in your reception. You've got to do something that makes you different. It's no good being a better ABC, because there's so many other ABCs. What you've got to do is be a different ABC. And position yourself for that. And one way to be different in marketing is to be outrageous and to deliberately be prepared to upset some people. And there's a betting company in the UK called Paddy Power, and they are exponents of this. They have somebody whose title is Head of Mischief, and his job is to find topical mischief. So when there was the horse meat scandal in the UK, they found horse meat in the food chain for imported foodstuffs. People were horrified. People don't eat horse in the UK. It's just the French do, but the English don't. And Paddy Power published a booklet of horse meat recipes, and the title was From Stable to Table. All right, and they put that out, and people were horrified, but it didn't matter. And then they produced the most complained about advert on TV in the UK, and it was a blind football match, all right, a soccer match you would call it, and all the players were blind, all right. And when you do that, you have a ball with a bell in it. As the ball, you can hear it rolling around, all right, and it's rolling around the pitch. The blind players are trying to kick it, and then this cat wanders onto the pitch, all right, and it's got a bell around its neck, and so one player, and he kicks it way up in the tree, And the ref goes like this. And then the guy from Paddy Power says, we can't do anything about Tiddles, but if you take a bet with us, you can get your money back or something. Anyway, a lot of old ladies with cats were really upset about this, and they complained to the TV corporation. The most complained about ad. But they weren't the target market for bettors. The target market was young men who all loved it. So sometimes it pays to be deliberately outrageous. You've got it's a risk. You've got to calculate who you're going to upset and how much you're going to upset them. But you've got to differentiate yourself. And marketing is about getting your message through. And if you just put out a bland standard message about how great we are, it's just going to wash straight past people.
Yeah, sometimes you got to kick the cat to make the product work, right?
You got it.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Well, there's so many great stories in here, Paul. So many little nuggets here. If there's one more or one that maybe you want people to start with, right? Because, of course, folks, you got to get the book, right? Get Lateral Thinking for Every Day, Extraordinary Solutions for Ordinary Problems by Paul Sloane. That's Sloane with an E, Sloane. So, Paul, what's maybe one more that maybe they should start with, or one that if people are like, they maybe want to dip their 2 toes in the water of lateral thinking, what's one that they can share?
Well, there's lots of examples in the book, and going back in history, we could see them time and time again. You know, until the 1920s, all shops were like Victorian shops. You'd go in and you'd ask for some butter and some lard and some bacon, and the assistant would go and collect each thing. And there was a queue of people behind you, all right? And eventually they would total it all and say, that comes to $4.57, and you'd pay and leave. And a man called Michael Cullen said, what would happen if we turned the shop around and instead of the assistant serving the customers collected what they wanted from the back of the store, then they paid as they left? And I'll bet people said that's a really stupid idea. People are going to get confused. You're going to have to put prices on everything. Customers want service. They don't want to have to do all the work. He said, I'm going to try it anyway. He created the world's first supermarket, the King Cullen store in New Jersey. And it's a simple idea, isn't it? Very simple. Turn the shop around. Its impact has been enormous. And it's a piece of lateral thinking. And with any business, there's a better way to do things. But I'll finish with one funny story, I think, about a little old woman, and she's sitting at home. And when the front doorbell rings, apparently this is a true story, she puts on her hat and a coat, and she goes to the front door, and she opens the door. And if it's somebody she wants to see, she says, oh, I've just got home. Come in, we'll have a cup of tea. If it's someone she doesn't want to see, she says, sorry, I'm just on my way out. We'll have to meet some other time for a cup of tea. So she's got the perfect solution either way. She's either coming in or going out, depending upon the person.
That's so easy.
That's lateral thinking.
Easy. Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. So, friends, if you want to get to know Paul more, you should check out destination-innovation.com. That's Paul's website. Lots of great stuff there. Paul's written a bunch of books. This book, Lateral Thinking for Every Day, from our friends at Kogan Page, is available everywhere. Like, you put this in, you're going to find the book. You can't miss it. So, Paul, if you had one place, though, that people could go and, besides your website, where maybe your favorite social network, where they could go and have a chat with you about innovation and lateral thinking, where would that be?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Paul Sloane. You can link with me on LinkedIn. If you search for Paul Sloane, I'll probably come up very early. You can see me on YouTube. I've got a channel there. I've got my TEDx talk on there. And there is a forum for lateral puzzles, if you like lateral puzzles, called lat-puzz.com, lat-puzz. For the lateral puzzles forum, you can set and solve lateral puzzles there. So there's lots of places. I'm very happy to have a dialogue with people, and I'm always open to ideas and suggestions and questions.
Always open to lateral thinking, you are, Paul. That is fantastic. So good stuff. Really fun. So again, friends, connect with Paul on Twitter, on LinkedIn, lat-puzz.com, or Paul's website, destination-innovation.com. Again, this is Paul Sloane, Sloane, Paul Sloane, author of Lateral Thinking for Every Day. Great stuff, Paul. Thanks for helping me think a little bit differently today. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it, Phil. I enjoyed it.